Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at discounttire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
Hey, honey, how was your trip to Menards?
Awesome! The Menards bag sale is back.
Oh, what's the bag sale?
You grab a bag in store and save 15% on everything you can fit in the bag. I got a new cordless drill, LED bulbs to help with the electric bill, stocked up on toothpaste, always need batteries, and paint for the mudroom, plus all my favorite snacks. Where are you going?
Menards, we're out of cleaning supplies.
Hurry in! Grab a bag in store now through January 14th. Get 15% off everything you can fit in the bag. See store for complete details.
For exclusive podcasts and more, sign up at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, a man looks for answers around his sister's 1987 disappearance. How far will he go to prove his parents killed her and covered up? We'll discuss Burden of Proof on HBO. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
So love of my life has been taken out because Rebecca is mad at me because she reads the script like Ron Burgundy. And if something's gone or something's there not supposed to be there, it's fuck yourself, San Diego.
You're our love of my life, Kevin.
All right.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
Good evening, Rebecca.
And finally, our captain of all things cynical, the author of the City Trilogy, host of Strange Arrivals, Toby Ball. Hello, Toby.
Hello, Rebecca.
All right, so Kevin, this is obviously Monday's podcast.
Obviously, yes.
To everyone who's listening on Monday. What is coming up on Thursday's show?
On Thursday, we're going to be talking about the Lemonada podcast, Blind Plea.
Okay. So I guess, should we just get into it, or do you want to chit-chat about something, Kevin?
No, we should discuss.
All right, let's discuss. Let's get into this documentary. Let's just play that first clip. Leading off.
I guess empathetic is the right word.
She's always nice to people who didn't fit in.
I always thought she was spoiled rotten.
Kind of quiet.
She was outgoing and carefree.
She was just needy.
Her disposition was like most 15-year-olds.
In 1987, Jennifer Pandos vanished from her Virginia home after an argument with her father. Her mother discovered a suspicious note from someone claiming Jennifer had willingly left with her, although she never returned.
In 2014, I reached out to an attorney in Williamsburg about whether I could sue my parents for the death of my sister.
After odd behavior, flunked polygraphs, and accusatory handwriting analysis, Stephen Pandos believed his parents were involved in her disappearance and had covered up the crime for years. But his mother insisted she knew nothing and now only wants her son back in her life.
I don't know how long it's been since I've seen him. I really don't remember. Oh, well.
8 years in the making, the HBO series Burden of Proof follows Stephen's journey to solve his sister's cold case by getting his parents to confess. With a team of cops, private eyes, and other experts in tow, can the answers to Jennifer's disappearance be found in his family or somewhere else? Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about very big spoilers from Burden of Proof. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes to hear our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. So Toby, if someone wants a fast-paced documentary, this may not be the documentary for that person, right?
Or you got to play it at like double speed or something. Yeah, it's kind of languid. You know, in addition to people just kind of talking slowly, there's a lot of walking around, staring into space, driving from here to there. Conversations are slow. Everything is very slow. And it's not like, I like this documentary, but
Same.
The pacing does take some getting used to, and especially, and I know we'll get to the spoiler later, but until you get to like sort of this big moment, you may be wondering, why am I watching? Because there's like a few moments of like pretty compelling tape, but you're not getting a whole lot for the amount of time that you're putting into it. That seems sort of out of the ordinary. And I'll just say one more thing. I realize I'm kind of going on, but the very beginning is like even slower than the rest of it, where they have this weird thing where they have the narrator will say, and then he said, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then they have an actor in a recreation who then immediately says the exact same thing that the narrator said they said. So it's just like, it makes it doubly slow.
And I think to piggyback on that, Toby, for me, I felt sort of like exhausted by the case and the pace at the end of this. But that's how the people that are involved with this feel. So in a way, it sort of had sort of this side effect of making me get into that same mindset of just exhaustion at this case that's been going on. So they were doing this for what, 8 years he's been taping? Yeah.
So Kevin, this was obviously in the works for a long time.
Yeah.
Is it unclear to me, did Stephen commission this film, or was he just a subject of this film and it went on forever? Is that ever clear?
It's not clear. I mean, I would be... I'm doubtful that he, you know, paid a bunch of filmmakers to follow him along on this. He may have approached them and said, this is what I'm doing. But this is actually one time when I really would love to talk with the director.
Same.
And just find out, like, how you got involved. And, like, so, you know, what did you do for all 2021? Or, you know, I would really like to know more about that.
It reminds me of what's that film with like Ethan Hawke and whatever, where
Boyhood?
It just like goes on forever. But you describe it in your notes as a verb film. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's verb film. It's not a noun film. It's like we're seeing action. We're following this as it goes on. A noun film would be where we're just talking about the thing that happened, right? We were just showing, recapping the story. We are following along Stephen and these filmmakers as they try to go through the evidence and deal with his parents and see if they can get them to open up about what actually happened the night that Jennifer disappeared. And I am really impressed that they stuck with this. The filmmakers stuck with this for 8 years or so, because they really could have pulled out at any time and said, okay, here's our ending. But they knew enough to stay with it until they had something real that they could finish on.
So my question is this film about what happened to Jennifer or about what Stephen thinks happened to Jennifer? In my opinion, this film is about Stephen and not about Jennifer. Laura, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's actually about family dynamics. And in this case, the family dynamics have led Stephen to become so connected and fixated on this theory of the case that he has because he was off at school when this happened. His parents didn't really share information. There are some things that are very questionable when you hear about this case, some of the details, but I think it's about sort of this family situation. And because of his own unresolved childhood trauma, he is not able to get out of this lane that he's on of what he feels like he needs to prove happened in this case to find resolution. So it's really about Stephen's journey. But Stephen's journey is really about this bigger picture of the family trauma in this family with the dad who's got his issues, with the mom who, is pretty, I think, meek in following whatever the dad is telling her to do. And now, later in life, this dynamic between Stephen and his mother and whether or not he should allow her back into his life and to meet her grandchildren and to have a role in their life. So, and he even said, like, whatever happened to Jennifer was a way for me to perhaps exercise a lot of anger toward my father about growing up. So he's kind of conflating these issues together. And I think to some degree that sort of takes them away from being able to go down lines of inquiry where there might have been some other things going on in this case.
That being said, Laura, I'm going to stay with you for a second. I think the documentary does a good job of putting us in the mindset of somebody who's 100% sure his parents are guilty. So they sort of convince the audience for a moment there, or longer than a moment because it's very slow, that the parents are probably guilty. And when you're in that lens, yes or no, you can be convinced that the parents' behavior, and especially like the mother, for instance, when she's brought in for that questioning, through that lens, they can be perceived as guilty as hell, right? Which, by the way, I think is a very important lesson for an audience like us to learn.
Well, exactly, because if you look in this, it's kind of like a trap that you can fall into. There's some stuff that seems pretty sketchy, that seems like it doesn't add up. When one of the friends calls the house, the mom is like making excuses as to why Jennifer's not there, that she's like sick or she's with her dad or whatever. Doesn't tell one of the sisters, like the aunts, for like a month that Jennifer's allegedly that she's missing. And then on the dad's side of the family, there's people who say they didn't learn for years that something happened. But then you also have like your first thing that hits you is, why didn't they immediately contact the police? Why did they react so nonchalant isn't the word, but they didn't like panic when they get this note. They didn't go to the police. They're just like, yeah, okay. So you're like, okay, something's going on. Well, people react differently to traumatic situations. And that's something we've talked a lot in this podcast, that we can't stereotype based on one reaction, because that might not necessarily indicate guilt or innocence. It might be that this person's own personal situation that's making them react that way. But, you know, it just goes on. And then you have the stuff where the parents end up having parts of the case file. Like, oh, now we have the dental records. Oh, now we have the note. Like, why don't the police have that? How did the parents? So there's a lot of stuff that just seems super fucking sketchy.
But they are pretty sus, right? I mean, when you look at it, and they are all the way, I would say all the way through.
Well, the father had some sus stuff, and the mom, basically said, well, if my husband hid the body, and if, she said that in the police interrogation.
There's definitely enough circumstantial stuff there for an audience to go, oh, I don't know. So, I think for a lot of us, as we are watching, we kind of believe Stephen, at least to the extent, like, we have to examine this. And a lot of it just seems to be trying to decide, how can Stephen get mom to tell the truth? Will dad confess? What is the thing that dad said while he was in jail? What the hell with this letter? All this stuff. I think that from a viewer's point of view, we're definitely trying to get to buy into what Stephen believes, because, and this is why Stephen believes it, there's a lot of suspicious stuff, right? But in the end, that's really not important.
It doesn't help that all of the mother's sisters believe that.
Everybody believes it. Yeah. The cops believe it.
Yeah.
All their relatives believe it.
Yeah. Well,
everybody does.
Do the cops believe it? That ends up being the key to the whole thing. They believe the cops believe it, which is why they believe it. We'll get into that.
That one female cop in the beginning, though, in that interrogation video, was like pointing her finger, and she is going after mom.
I didn't write the note. I didn't leave it in her room. I didn't help Ron remove the body from the house. Okay. I didn't help.
So Ron removed the body from the house?
If he did, I didn't help him.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about the interrogation video, right? Is that the first time you see it, you're like, wow, she is being totally obstinate. And then the second time you see it at the end, it's like, oh man, like this is brutal given what the reality is.
Right. So talk about the presence of the camera, Toby, because we have to remember there are filmmakers here during conversations, these very intimate conversations, right? That, Stephen's having with his relatives, that Stephen's having with his mother. I just kept thinking, like, Stephen hasn't talked to his father for years. He hasn't talked to his mother for years. And he's now having these conversations with them with filmmakers present, right? These are not genuine. They are authentic, but they're not authentic at the same time, right?
Yeah. So I kind of had like a little journey about a mental journey about the use of the camera, because my first thing was when I started watching, I'm like, trying to picture myself in like a similar situation, thinking that what I really needed was to have a filmmaker follow me around as I had all these like really emotionally intense discussions with members of my family. And then I don't know if that just got me following the camera a little bit more, but there's always like a certain amount of, artificiality to these documentaries. Like it can go from where somebody's got a handheld camera following somebody around, but a lot of these sort of higher end things, like you see somebody open the door from the inside and let in the investigator or stuff like this. So they're always like setting up these scenes so that it looks natural, but that it's not. And for whatever reason, it sort of seemed more obvious in this one. Like there's these situations where there's a a scene at at a cop's house where he lets that investigator who they hire, and he answers the door. The camera's already inside. He answers the door. They talk, and then the investigator and the cop go outside, and they've obviously are still mic'd. And then the camera like opens the blinds a little bit and is shooting through the blinds at this conversation they're having.
But there's no question that Nancy took that case file and gave it to her husband, and then he gave it to what's his name, to Ron. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever. You know, and Margie, yeah, she's lying her ass off.
There's another scene where they're following a woman who's got this big box of stuff and is going to a hotel room, and she has to like kind of prop it up against the wall on a knee. And it's like trying to open the door, and I'm like, literally there's like 3 people right there, and they're just letting her do that rather than help her so it helps the shot. So I just felt very present to me in a way that it usually doesn't.
Probably the most obvious one is when Stephen calls his father for the first time in years, and there's a camera crew at his father's house. At his place, and a camera crew with Stephen, right? So this is like, I just kept thinking about the logistics of this documentary. Like, it has the feel of a one camera following one person around thing, but it is not that. It is not that. It is a very sophisticated, like multi-crew, and it had to be like in some ways storyboarded, but also they don't know what they're going to get. Like it's difficult to make this thing.
They had a scene, I think I remember this correctly, where he's like walks through an office to get to a computer terminal, and instead of shooting it behind him, they shoot it from in front of him. So they show him walking towards it. So you know they've already rehearsed it and done the walk, so the camera person knows where they're supposed to go, and that he's just following the camera people. And I don't know, for whatever reason that kind of stuck out to me. It's like, this is like really like more staged than most documentaries, or maybe I'm just noticing it more, but it certainly made an impression.
I wouldn't necessarily say that that's rehearsed or staged. I mean, I worked with videographers who you let them go, they know how to get to where they need to go. They look and they'll move around and they'll set up for that shot. I know the shot you're talking about, I think he was going to the court clerk's office and was printing out some stuff, and we get to see a nice 15-second shot of him working, as you said. But he's in there for 15, 20 minutes in real life or whatever. The cameraman's got time to go around and like, no, that doesn't work for me. This works for me. There's 10 other angles that he got of him doing the same thing until he found the one that he liked. So just because it looks good and the lighting's great doesn't mean that it didn't happen organically when you're doing cinema verite stuff. But, you know, you got to say, well, if we're going to go out to wherever Dad is, I don't know where he is, Alaska or wherever the hell he is, if we're going to send a camera there and we know that this is going to happen, let's try to coordinate these two things. That was Oklahoma. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I you can't mess up with those shots at that gorgeous white countertop. I mean, that's
my God. Stephen's house.
Like, what does he do for work?
This is off topic. Stephen has money.
Yes.
Stephen has
yes.
I'm sorry. This is completely off topic.
But that counter.
No, it's not. It's extra textual, but it's also textual, right?
Yeah.
Stephen has money and his parents don't. Yeah. It's extra textual, but for me, it's also textual, right?
Yes.
His mother doesn't have money. His father doesn't have money. And at one point, his mother says to him, "You were going to sue me and take my house." And he was like, "It wasn't about the money, Mom." And I'm like, no shit, it wasn't about the money, Stephen, because he lives in one of the most gorgeous houses I've ever seen in a documentary. It looked like they rented a house from like Chip and Joanna or whatever to film this thing.
He's like the bizarro Michael Peterson.
He is.
Yes. And this is like the bizarro cross of Michael Peterson crossed on JonBenet Ramsey.
But nice. He's like Michael Peterson, but nice.
He's driving a Porsche. He's got a Rolex. We don't ever see what he does for work. We don't even get a hint at it. So
super nice fiance / wife who's very supportive of everything he does. He's basically dedicated some portion of his life to finding out what happened to his sister. Obviously, he's been very successful in whatever's going on.
You know what he could be doing for work?
What's that?
He could be running his own Patreon.
Oh, well, what a transition, Kevin.
Yeah, he could be
I'm sure that's what he's doing.
He's like, get all my mom, dad hate content.
Yeah.
And see,
I'm 100% certain that that's what Stephen's doing.
He's at the $15 level, you can yell at my mom too.
Yes, and you could hear us yell about this documentary. Actually, we're not yelling. I think we're all sort of talking about it in a very thoughtful way.
We are. So if you join us on Patreon at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia, you'll get all kinds of exclusive content, including the Crime Writers on After Show. This week, the four of us are going to be giving our summer recommendations. So whatever we want to talk about and recommend to folks, whether it's a podcast or a movie, a book.
We can do a book?
You can do a book.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
We're going to do some of that. People love that. Remember, you can try us for 7 days for free. So if you haven't, done that, you want to dip your toe in, go to patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia. All sorts of other great stuff. Toby Ball recently recorded his latest Deep Dive Book Club podcast. He was on the book Rogues. Toby, how did it go?
It was good. It was a collection of essays by Patrick Radden Keefe, who writes for The New Yorker. My guests were the very handsome Livy Burdett.
Yay!
And Sarah Carradine from Crime Scene and Leah Satilli. And it was a really handsome, by the way. Yeah, and it was a very is a very interesting conversation. I think our opinions on the book varied a little bit, so I think it didn't get contentious, but there were definitely there was more
different textures to it. I love it.
I'm not just saying that because she's listening right now, but isn't Livy so great and smart?
Oh yeah,
for a young person.
I mean, she was. Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, she's in there with some people who've got a lot of podcasting hours in.
Did she mention over and over again she went to an Ivy League school?
No,
I did.
She didn't do that. Oh, you did.
She's not that person. She's the opposite.
From the Ivy League perspective, Olivia, how would you characterize this essay?
I read it from the same book, but mine was more expensive. We also have the Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, and we have our Married with podcast, where Rebecca and I dish out relationship and life advice to people who want to know.
Who's more qualified than us?
Who's more qualified than us? In the next episode, we will discuss Suzanne's question. She wants to know how to stop being a people pleaser.
Oh.
Stop asking the question so nicely.
Oh.
And lastly, just want to let folks know that we are planning a meetup. By we, I mean me and my handsome daughter, Lily, when we're going to be in Dublin at the end of the month. We're asking folks that are Ireland adjacent. I guess that includes Norway. That's, adjacent, I guess, to some extent.
Or just in Ireland.
I don't know. The Vikings came over.
We have
it was a long
tons
time
of
ago.
listeners in Ireland. Tons.
We do. So we're going to be getting together for a drink in Dublin on the last Friday of the month.
Does Lily know about this, by the way?
She does. She approved.
She's being dragged along on a work trip?
She approved.
Oh, that means we can write the whole thing off, though.
Remember when Teddy did this when we were in London?
Yes.
And then
I remember that.
He had the best time.
We had the best time.
He was 15 and he got hammered.
So if you want to know more information about that, just go to our Facebook group, which is called what is it called? The Crime Writers on Official.
The official
Facebook
Crime Writers on
Just
Discussion
go to our
group.
Crime Writers on Facebook page and join the group. If you're nice, we'll let you in.
Absolutely.
All right, Kevin, does that end the business section?
Thus ends the business section.
All right, let's fade that music out right now.
Do you ever meet someone who seems kind of off? Whether it's a creepy neighbor or random phone number that keeps calling you, Truthfinder has you covered. You can search for people by name, address, phone number, email, and more. Truthfinder can be especially helpful for running confidential background checks on anyone you're planning to meet from online dating apps. Go to truthfinder.com/podcasts for a special offer. That's truthfinder.com/podcasts to access your special offer today.
Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at discounttire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
Hey, honey, how was your trip to Menards?
Awesome. The Menards bag sale is back.
What's the bag sale?
You grab a bag in store and save 15% on everything you can fit in the bag. I got a new cordless drill, LED bulbs to help with the electric bill, stocked up on toothpaste, always need batteries, and paint for the mudroom, plus all my favorite snacks. Where are you going?
Menards, we're out of cleaning supplies.
Hurry in! Grab a bag in store now through January 14th. Get 15% off everything you can fit in the bag. See store for complete details.
Kevin?
Yes.
I have to ask you about the note.
The note.
I have thoughts about the note.
Okay.
What are your thoughts about the note?
Oh, man, this is so great. It's so important and intriguing. It's funny, we sometimes talk about a MacGuffin, and for those who hear us talk about it but don't know exactly what we're referring, a MacGuffin is an item, a device, a plan. It's any sort of thing in a movie or a show that propels the action, but in and of itself, in the end, isn't very important. It'd be like, the secret rebel plans or the Maltese Falcon, right? It's really all about the whole rest of the action. And so the letter is kind of like that.
For those who haven't watched it, do you want to just explain what the letter is?
So when Jennifer disappeared, that night a letter was found on her bed, and it was written apparently by somebody with their non-dominant hand. And it starts off by saying, Jennifer is with me, and I am like a father figure to her, and she's fine.
Your daughter is with me. She is fine. She is having some problems, though. She needs some time away from this place, 3 to 5 days max. She is like a daughter to me, and I'm like a dad to her. Here are some of Jennifer's quotes. I'm fine. I just need time to think.
So it's actually the only clue that we actually have, because we don't have a body or fingerprints or anything really like that. And it's right out of JonBenet Ramsey, right? When you have to, look at it and think, well, who would have written this and to what purpose? And the only purpose really is to delay and misdirect. And it continues to do that.
Maybe. I don't know. I have a theory about this that's completely different than anything that the documentary posits.
Oh.
So.
All right, you do it.
You mean you're going to go with it did remind me. I did see a lot of parallels to like the JonBenet thing, and that it's like this mystery that we're always wondering about, and it was always like, was it somebody close in the family that was responsible? And just the way that people are still consumed by it. Although, remember that documentary we watched about that with that like bizarre fake cereal in their fake house?
And the pineapple? Yeah.
The fake pineapple.
So stupid.
None of that here. But the reenactments here were kind of weird.
I really liked the use of reenactments in this documentary.
Oh my God, I thought it was horrible.
I only liked it. I didn't like
odd.
it. Yeah. I didn't like them because I think they were good. I liked them because they were sparing and because they didn't listen, I didn't think the reenactments were actually good in and of themselves. I liked when they used them, and I liked how infrequently they used them. And I don't know. There was something about the way, especially the ways at the end. I think they could have been worse, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I thought the parts where they had the Jennifer character sort of read her poetry, whatever, maybe turn to camera. That's stylized. That's fine. It might work. It might not work. But like you said, to have the reenactments and then dialogue, like what the hell? What was it like the actor dad says like when he gets called, oh, what the hell now? Something
that I
like
didn't
that.
Like.
Yeah, that I
didn't like that part.
And Toby's right, to have it mirror back and forth. I was thinking, is this Radiolab?
Yeah.
And it's I don't know. Can we talk about the very last scene, or do you want to wait till the end?
I was going to say that at the end where she's like peering out the window.
Yeah, I didn't like that part.
Well, and what's crazy about that is that she's peering out the window as headlights pull into their driveway, when the entire time, one of the main things is nobody could have driven in there because they had to get past the gate. So it couldn't have been a stranger coming into the driveway.
But how do we know someone didn't get past the gate? We never hear that someone didn't get past the gate. We never hear that some security guard said that didn't happen.
Right. So, but if you're going to show that as the last thing, you got to tease it a little bit that was a possibility.
Right. But do we ever hear any evidence that the security guard said someone didn't come in that night? Do we ever hear that in the documentary?
I don't think so. There's a lot of shit we don't hear.
Never hear.
Yeah.
You know why we never hear that? Because the parents didn't fucking report her missing the next day.
You know what?
I thought she ran away, right? I mean, is there any reason why we don't think she ran away?
I think she ran away.
Yeah,
and she never came back.
My opinion
at the end of the day, I was just like,
my opinion is, I'm going to be real. She ran away, and she probably died after she ran away. Because when young people run away, they fall into a life that sometimes leads them into a situation where they die. Drugs, prostitution, dying.
I think the evidence against that was that she left her contact lenses and other things that one would assume. Did she leave all of her contact? I mean, you don't know. Guys, you know what the evidence that we don't have? The LUDs from the home telephone.
Yeah.
If apparently there was an argument and then she called somebody, well, who did she call?
Yeah.
There'd be a record.
We also don't know. And there was this whole assumption that no one drove in. And I was like, that's a bullshit assumption. Because that assumes that the parents had, if the parents had, for instance, reported her missing the next day, they would have asked the guard gate the next day, did anyone come in that night? And they would have said, no one came in that night. The parents didn't report her missing, so we don't know that no one drove in that night. We don't know.
They could have even called into the house, and she's on the line, and she says, call waiting. And it's like, yeah, send them in. And then gets back on the thing and nobody ever knows. But I don't know. It just seemed like a weird way to end it. Although I realize I'm going back to is by sort of demonstrating something that you've sort of, I don't know if they've established it, but they've certainly like talked about how that was not one of the possibilities, and that's the final thing.
So, can I ask you, Rebecca, this one thing?
So we're doing the thing the documentary isn't about. We're just guessing what happened.
Yeah, Rebecca, can I ask you one thing though?
Sure.
If you were on the theory that she ran away by herself, why would she write a note in that manner?
Because 15-year-olds are fucking stupid. 15-year-olds are fucking
Then would you
stupid.
eliminate the possibility she ran away by herself because of the letter?
It doesn't matter if she ran away by herself or not. I think maybe she wrote the letter. Did anyone ever posit whether or not she wrote the letter? It's always like her mom.
Well,
or
it
dad.
could have been the guy, what's his name, that his handwriting was quite similar.
Literally.
By the way.
Literally everyone's like someone close to her who had to have known her wrote the letter. I'm like, you know who knew her? She knew her. She knew her fucking self.
Yeah, if you take it at face value, it's like she didn't take her stuff because she's going to be back in 3 days.
Exactly.
Then why would she write that note that way in that?
To scare her parents.
To scare her parents?
To
I'm going to
make
write
her-
with my left hand.
To scare her parents.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it like
seems
the family
weird.
dynamics don't seem that awesome.
We also got a lot of
I'm not buying it.
information that she had like mental health stuff going on. Listen, the information here is nuts. And we are doing the thing that the documentary invites us not to do, which is to analyze what actually happened in the case, because that is not what the documentary is about. But, and this is the whole point. So this is the question I have, Toby, because the documentary does these dual things where it debunks a bunch of bullshit science, like lie detectors, like all the stuff they did back then. But then they bring in like a person who can do like truth detecting through questioning.
That was the most absurd thing. So she starts off by doing it on a transcript.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, well, she said didn't instead of did not. And that indicates that she's telling the truth. And then when they're actually interviewing the mom, she looks right at the camera and says did not. And then that same truth analyst or whatever, it's like, oh, yeah, she was definitely telling the truth. I'm like, oh my God.
She's a truth teller.
I'm like, she just literally did the thing that you said was a tell for lying in front of the camera. And you're now saying she's telling the truth. So I don't know where to go with that.
She also has a stick that she can find water.
Exactly.
Pointing to the ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be a truth teller, and you can just come in and I'll just sit there and I'll be like, bullshit.
Yeah, I don't believe. I think that whole thing
But
is bullshit.
they have the straight royal flush of all the crazy forensics. They've got polygraphs. They got cadaver dogs. They got interrogators who are going to parse out the words. Polygraphs. The profiler. And for fuck's sake, a handwriting analyst, someone looking at the penmanship of someone's non-dominant hand.
Yeah.
So of course
regression
Stephen
hypnosis?
would...
They have regression hypnosis?
Of course Stephen would be certain his
You're
parents
not
are
even
involved.
on a couch in that
cadaver
hypnosis.
dogs?
How could you be hypnotized in that chair?
Don't
Not even
debunk
laying on a
cadaver
couch.
dogs, but debunk cadaver dogs that actually, they do find cadavers sometimes.
Sometimes, but they're not. No, but they also will hit on other things. I mean, we've seen this before where like they try to certify a cadaver dog and the person who does it is like, no, I put a fucking squirrel there and you hit on that. And that's why your dog doesn't pass.
Yeah. All of these cadaver dogs didn't find, we got a lot of great footage of them running in slow motion.
Yeah.
Though.
By the way, does anybody think that like when they shot the reenactments, they went back to that guy's house and did it in the actual bedroom? Because it looks like that, right?
Wait, which reenactments?
All of the Jennifer in her room.
Yeah, the kid.
The kid.
I think
because it's the four-post.
They did get into the house.
They did, but
Yeah,
I feel
when
like
that old guy came out.
yeah, over the next 8 years, they sweet talked the guy and said, "Do you think we could?"
We have
It's
to
just
talk about that
Someone
scene.
knows something.
Oh, that's exactly what I said, Laura. It's like someone knows something, except I liked it. That is literally exactly what I said. Before we started taping this, Kevin came home and I was like, this documentary is like someone knows something, except I liked it. So Stephen went back drove in front of his childhood home, right? And he's standing out front with filmmakers like a weirdo, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine you did that. The owner comes outside and he's like, what the fuck are you doing in front of my house? And he's like, I used to live here. Now, keep in mind, it's not just Stephen. If you walked in front of your child at home and said, I used to live here, the homeowner would be like, oh, hi, do you want to come in? He's standing there with a documentary crew. So, of course, the dude's like, that's weird. Remember, do you know that someone like disappeared from here? And he's like, yeah, that was my sister. Even weirder. The guy lets him in. And then they have this whole conversation where it's like, wait, why was your sister sleeping in the main bedroom on the first floor?
I know. That was weird.
I ended up trying to like weird HGTV tour of the murder house.
She had the master.
I do love Williamsburg. I will say I do love Williamsburg.
It was like the scene setting in this was incredible. I will say, like the atmosphere, the scene setting, the gated community. It was beautifully shot.
Can we talk about the alternate suspect?
Tony?
Yeah. And his friend Charlie.
Tony's wife, who was the high school girlfriend that broke up with, they're still together.
And then got back together. And after Jennifer was taunting them, following them around in the hallways and looking in their
What
classrooms.
are the chances they would still be together after all these years?
I don't know. I don't think that's
slim. That's a slim
high school
chance.
sweethearts.
No,
That's
I know
a slim chance.
people from my high school that
I am not back together. I'm not still together with a person I was dating when I was 16.
Didn't say the odds are the odds are greater than zero. So
it happens.
You know what? The odds are pretty
Doesn't
long
always
on
happen.
Teenage Tony like killing somebody and then putting him in a barrel, covering it with acid. And then rolling that barrel without any acid coming out. That's 55-gallon drum now weighs 440 pounds, filled with acid in a body, and then just rolling it into his car and making advantage either by himself or with his one-armed friend.
Yes. You know what the odds are extra long on?
What?
Tony having done it and then doing any interviews with a documentary crew about the murder of his high school girlfriend. Like, if he did it and 30 years later, a documentary crew approaches him and they're like, hey, we're doing a documentary about the murder of your high school ex-girlfriend. Do you want to be in it? If you actually did it, you'd be like, nope, not going to do that interview.
Too painful for me.
These side characters were so interesting because they all were like, I mean, you've got the guy that was supposed to help him. The guy who's got like his MAGA hat and he's like out there and he's like, yeah, he wants to know how to dispose of a corpse.
He had one arm, Laura.
Yeah, I know. The one-armed man. I mean, it's like freaking Twin Peaks. And then you've got like the old guy who's got the criminal record, who was like the creepy babysitter guy. And I'm like, okay, like let's dig into these people a little bit more.
It's incredible.
This is all in Williamsburg of all places.
I know.
My favorite place. I got to go back to Williamsburg. You know how much I love those colonial reenactors. Maybe the one-armed man is like some general or something.
And then you go to Oklahoma and you go to Dad's house and he's supposed to be the worst villain you've ever met. And he seems fine. Like, I'm sorry. I know. I believe that he was horrible. I do. I believe abuse victims. I 100% believe them. But he's living in a house full of tchotchkes with his like lovely wife. And I am expecting the worst villain in the world.
Especially when you already think he's the killer.
Yes. And literally the cop is like, he's going to try to control the interview. It's going to be real hard. Mm-hmm. They sit down with him and he's like, just so you know, I'm no bullshit. I'm be whatever. And you're like, oh, he's doing it. It's going to be real bad. And then he's like, fine. Like, he's just like sitting with his tchotchkes.
Yeah.
Well, it's easier being a bad guy when you didn't do that particular thing.
Yeah.
You know?
He told people at a wedding, like, no, Jennifer's just away for the past 7 years.
Somebody knows something.
Yeah. At the end, it's like I'm all for like giving people breaks on their behavior when tragedy befalls them.
Mm-hmm.
But 7 years later, telling people at a wedding that your daughter is actually off on a trip.
Yeah.
When she's been missing for 7 years.
That guy's messed up. I'm not saying he's not messed up because he has tchotchkes. Yes.
That denial, I don't know.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If somebody went to any of your parents' houses, would any of your parents have a shoebox full of letters, love letters that you and your high school friends or paramours wrote to one another?
No, because I took it with me.
But seriously, the mother has a Puma box full of correspondence.
Yeah, of course, because she left it. It wasn't like these were Steven's notes and his love letters, and he took them with him. She died or disappeared when she's 15,
But she
16.
doesn't live in the same house anymore.
Well,
But can you imagine throwing them out if that's like the most recent thing that she has? Like that's her document of her daughter, like at the age she was right before she went missing.
But she never read that. Like it's almost as if she's.
I've got all kinds of shit like that I have. I don't look at it, but I know that someday I might.
Really?
like some like paper I wrote when I was a freshman in college. It's in a box up in my attic.
It's called a basement or an attic.
I have those in my basement. I downsized a lot when I moved, but I do have some like random papers.
It'd be a pretty short fucking documentary if she didn't do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I just feel like these are things that should have been looked at the time that Jennifer went missing.
No shit. No fucking shit.
I mean, I'm like, hello, like those letters had a lot, like, I mean, there was clearly a lot happening in that relationship.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
The police did, I mean, whatever. Go ahead, Toby.
I think he's better looking as an adult too, but that's just me.
Who?
That boyfriend.
Tony?
Yeah, I didn't see why they were like, all the girls loved him.
Early 80s were not good times for anybody in the looks department. Yeah, I mean, this isn't really here or there. And I just wonder if this is intentional. Did you guys catch there's a scene when they're talking about the whole how Jennifer had sort of maintained a relationship with Tony, even though she was dating whatever her name was.
Yeah.
And they're walking down the hallway and he's got his like arm around her and he like does the turn, just like that meme that was all over the place.
Yes.
I mean, it was like exactly, there's like, you could have freeze framed that exact meme where he's got his arm around one girl and is checking out the other girl who walks by.
He saw that in 5 music videos on MTV.
Yes.
I thought that was pretty. I didn't know if that was intentional or not, but if it was, it was pretty funny.
Jesse is a friend,
and not a very funny movie. But
all right. So just before we wrap up, I've already stated my theory. I think that Jennifer probably went away of her own accord and then fell upon hard times and probably met a bad end. Anybody else have any theories about what happened to Jennifer besides what I've thrown out there? Obviously, that I also don't think that's what this documentary is actually about. Does anyone else want to throw out
foul play?
Foul play
Definitely
from
foul
her
play.
room. Foul play.
It might not have happened in her room.
No, but like it went from her room. Like
from her room.
she was,
yeah. I mean, after Dad and they had the argument, it was
she made a call and
I don't know. They didn't have the phone records.
They didn't pull the LUDs.
Where are the LUDs?
I hate like speculating about what the reality of something is based on a documentary, but I do think that the thing that they don't talk about, which seemed to me like the easiest possible solution to the whole thing, is that she thought she was running away with somebody for a few days and they had something else in mind.
Right.
That seemed like that kind of covers all the.
I don't disagree.
All the bases.
And when they went and interviewed that former babysitting guy, they kind of left that dangling Chad out there.
Yeah.
The one who used to buy him all booze.
Yeah.
The one who tried to attack someone and she saved herself by rebuking him.
Rebuking him. I rebuke you in the name of
yes.
Joe. What did she say?
He grabbed me, kind of said, "Get in the car." So I kicked him in the privates and pointed to him and I said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, and I command you to leave me alone now."
The next time someone comes at me with anything, I want to make that my ringtone.
Do you ever meet someone who seems kind of off? Whether it's a creepy neighbor or random phone number that keeps calling you, Truthfinder has you covered. You can search for people by name, address, phone number, email, and more. Truthfinder can be especially helpful for running confidential background checks on anyone you're planning to meet from online dating apps. Go to truthfinder.com/podcasts for a special offer. That's truthfinder.com/podcasts to access your special offer today.
Why pick one city, one beach, one restaurant, or even one view? With Celebrity Cruises, you can have it all. Explore the best of Europe, the Caribbean, and Alaska with the best premium cruise line. And now get 75% off your second guest, plus bonus savings on select dates with Celebrity Cruises semi-annual sale. Visit Celebrity.com, call 1-800-CELEBRITY, or contact your travel advisor. Offer applies to non-refundable fares and select sailing. Savings vary by stateroom category. Other terms apply. Visit Celebrity.com for details. Ships Registry, Malta.
Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at discounttire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out Burden of Proof on HBO and Max? Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Burden of Proof?
Yeah, this is a thumbs up. It's definitely, as Toby pointed out, this is not a fast-paced documentary. This is the type of story that you're following along as it happens, much like as you follow along in like The Staircase or something like that, where it's filmed in real time over a long period of time following a particular issue. You know, I think this case is particularly fascinating because it's unsolved. But what is really interesting is that this is really kind of a portrait of grief on behalf of Stephen, the brother, who is, you know, the focus of this documentary, and also of his family dynamics and sort of the role that those family dynamics have played and how he continues to look at this case and investigate this case and seek answers in his sister's disappearance. They've got a lot of really interesting people there. The fact that they filmed this over 8 years and kept going means it's extremely thorough. At times, I did feel it was a little exhausting because I was like, oh my God, 8 years. But I think it's a really interesting story. And so I would give it a watch.
Toby Ball.
Yeah, I'm a thumbs up too. Actually, despite everything I said during the main review, I actually really liked it. Yeah, like Laura said, it's not super fast paced, and I would just say to people, stick with it. It does pay off. I think, there's a lot going on here, and part of it is it's family trauma and like what the effects of that are. And this isn't like a sort of common or something that probably happens a lot as far as family trauma goes, but it's just sort of an interesting impact that happens when you have an unhappy and perhaps abusive family. So anyway, yeah, I thought this was actually was good. So I'd give it a thumbs up.
Kevin Flynn.
I'm also a thumbs up. I think this could it have been 4 episodes, could it have been 3. Yeah, I suppose you could tighten it up, but I didn't mind how it rolled out. Yeah, the pace is deliberate, but not to the point where it loses momentum. It's also the kind of thing, if you want to sit on the couch and play your Property Brothers game or crush all the candy while it's going along, you probably won't miss too much. I will say, like everyone else, that while there is a disappearance at the center of it, Jennifer isn't really the center of this documentary. It's Stephen and his quest, and also, not just the effects of what happens to look at a crime, but how that and his actions affect his relationships with other people. And when you get to the final conclusion where at least, it means certain things for certain family members, yeah, you have to start thinking about what all those past years meant and what was gained and what was lost because of this effort. So anyway, I thought it was really, really good. It's a thumbs up.
Yeah, I freaking loved this documentary. It's slow as hell, but like Kevin said, it's deliberately slow because this is a documentary about a man whose adult life has been shaped by a belief, like a strong ass belief. And one thing we didn't talk about in the main review that I want to mention is that belief is shaped by something that a cop said. It's by a police report. And it is very interesting. And that's just like an element of this that like comes out really, really strongly in the end. That is fascinating to me. I just think the family dynamics are fascinating. The look into this man's quest is fascinating. And the pacing makes sense when you get to the end in a way that it doesn't make sense at the beginning. This to me is sort of like the mirror image of Murder on Middle Beach, where a young man is trying to solve his own mother's murder, but he's doing it himself. This is somebody who's trying to basically solve his own sister's disappearance, but he's basically with filmmakers trying to do it and feels very much on the outside. I don't know. It's weird as hell, this documentary, and the weirdness of it is one of the reasons why it's so great. And I finished watching it and still had a million questions, which is a sign of a great documentary in many ways. So yeah, big thumbs up for me for Burden of Proof. And no one's more surprised than me because when I started watching it, I was like, what the hell am I watching? So yeah, I really, really liked it. Big thumbs up. All right. So now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week. A company in China has fired a worker for spending up to 6 hours a day in the bathroom. The Liaodong Daily newspaper reports the dismissed employee says his recent anorectal surgery left him with ongoing pain and other challenges. The firm terminated him for tardiness, absences, and leaving work early. The man sued the company to get his job back. A judge ruled against him, saying the bathroom breaks were, quote, not within reasonable and normal physiological needs. Panel, that's a long time to sit around. What was this worker actually doing in the bathroom for 6 hours a day? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
I'm just going to channel if it was Kevin Flynn. He's in there playing Best Fiends.
Yeah.
What do you think, Toby? What was this worker doing for 6 hours in the bathroom?
See, sort of in that same vein, my only experience with this kind of thing was when Jake was probably in like 4th grade and he had a friend come and spend the weekend up with us at our island place. And he would disappear into the bathroom for, a long period of time, like half an hour, which is like actually kind of a long period of time. And then you go in and check, and it's just because he's playing this Game Boy.
What do you think, Kevin?
Well, I was thinking he was doing a crossword puzzle or a jigsaw puzzle, but I'm thinking now he might be writing all those little sayings for fortune cookies and then going on the toilet.
Oh,
right?
It's only
how
one
you
thing.
take it and then you add on the toilet?
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, I think he was like road testing those.
That's true. There's only one thing he could have been doing that would take that long, though.
What?
Listening to Scamanda.
I thought that. Yes.
I mean, it takes forever.
That was going to be one of mine, yes.
It takes forever to listen to Scamanda, does it not?
It does.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you and ask you why you spent such a long time in the bathroom, how can they find you on social media?
They can find all of my beauty tips for things that I do in the bathroom in the morning at Laura Bricker on Twitter.
Toby Ball, how can folks find you on social media?
At Toby Ball NH.
Kevin Flynn, what about you?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
If you want to follow me anywhere, find me at Reb Lavoie. Follow the show at Crime Writers On, and please join our incredible community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook group. Not the page, the group. It's awesome. Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You get all the stuff we make there. We make many, many podcasts. You get the show early ad-free. It is worth it. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our editor is the incredible Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this show is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in the Treehouse Yoga Studio above the Mockingbird Cafe in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where our teenagers also call us by our first names when we interrupt their phone calls.
Rebecca.
On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you
later.
How far will he go to prove his parents killed her and then covered it up? We will discuss. Joining me to get that done and more.
Obviously, I forgot to add that. We will discuss.
I left that. Can I just leave that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Partners in Crime Media. Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at discounttire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.